Pat, you made it back from Atlanta, and
Yep.
so did the Buckeyes. So the sun does come up the next day, but man, that was a tough one.
Absolutely. I mean, as good as I think that game was in the moment, and obviously both teams had positive moments and negative moments, and I'm sure neutral fans enjoyed watching game with over 80 points being scored and whatnot. Man, that's going to be a tough one for everyone involved with Ohio State to stomach for a little while. It sort of reminds me of the Clemson game in 2019 when you had the chance to win it late in obviously that was you weren't kicking a field goal, you were trying to throw a touchdown and there was a miscue there, but it just had that feeling. It was two elite teams. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt about that. I was asked earlier about what I thought on the national championship game, and while I wasn't going to rule TCU out with the way that they've been able to stay in games and find ways to win, I think that like in 2014 when Ohio State and Alabama played, you thought the winner of that game was going to win the national championship. And that's kind of where I'm at. And look, Ohio State came, I don't want to say just short because that field goal was pretty wide, but, you're a 1-point game with the defending national champions who have been the number one team in the country all year. There's no moral victories with this program. Fans aren't going to appreciate the fact that Ohio State almost beat Georgia. But I do think, if this had been a blowout or if Ohio State had even lost by a touchdown or 10 points, something like that, I think there's more questions than there already are about this program. I think right now you feel once you kind of are able to get past the pain of it, you feel like, okay, there's some good things to build on here, even though there are a number of questions that have to be answered this offseason. So as good of a loss as you could have had at that level. But ultimately, Ohio State's goals were beat Michigan, win the Big Ten, make the college football playoff, win a national championship. They did one of those and, came up way short on beating Michigan and getting to the Big Ten championship game. And then one game, obviously short of at least trying to play for a national championship. And that's the standard at Ohio State. And the Buckeyes will have to live with that this offseason.
Yeah, I think that it's reasonable to separate the standard from just an evaluation of the team and the program. The standard is the standard: go out and win Big Ten championships, go to the playoff, win the national championship, and they did not accomplish that. Whether it was 52-3 or 42-41, it was not accomplished. However, there's an evaluation of what's going on out on the field, and they went out there, and as we discussed, and I'm sure you did and I did on various platforms at various times, they delivered the type of performance I was hoping they would deliver. They were able to pull themselves together and put together a stellar effort. And because of the talent and championship pedigree of the team on the other side, it wasn't going to guarantee a win if they played their best. And you can go to various levels of what their best was or could have been, but they played a great game. All in all, they played a great game and competed, and that offense really went on display against what's probably still the best defense in the country. And now we can point to, and have been over the last few days, that injury, that targeting call, that timeout that negated a successful fake punt with an 11-point lead with 8 or 9 minutes left that would have kept the ball. All sorts of things that went on that just one of those things turning probably would have been enough.
It's interesting. I mean, I think, the losing team always in these big games looks back, especially if the game's close like that, looks back at what if this happened, what if that happened, and rightfully so in this case. I think, there's a reason to be disappointed in some of the things. I think officiating wise, look, I thought there should have been a penalty on that Marvin Harrison a hit, whether it's targeting or not. It obviously was a vicious hit. I know this is a contact sport, but I've seen that called, whether it's unnecessary roughness, whatever you want to call it. I've seen that called a lot, and obviously it had a huge impact. It knocked Marvin Harrison Jr. out of the game. But it wasn't called, and you have to get the field goal there, and you still have a whole quarter of playing with a lead. So yeah, there were also penalties on the other side, things that went Ohio State's way. The fake punt that Kirby Smart gets the timeout on, and I went back and looked at the all 22 film. He gets there. I don't know how it was shown on television, but you can see the referee puts a whistle to his mouth and starts to wave his hands right before, instant before Ohio. I was pausing it and looking at it as slow motion as I could to try and see when the snap was, when his arms start to go up, and they beat it. And a great job by Kirby Smart to recognize that, maybe criticize the Ohio State coaching staff for not changing up the look a little bit after just running that against Michigan, obviously unsuccessfully. But you look at that play, from what I can tell, and I know this has been circulating on social media, I said 12 guys on the field there. Now, whether that gets called or not, maybe you get away with one, you get the first down, no one sees it. Obviously, they didn't throw a flag from the other officials, so maybe you sneak one there. There was an earlier play, I think it was in the first quarter, when Georgia got called for a offside when Dallin Hayden clearly kind of took a step that the referees didn't call. Ohio State threw a 13-yard pass on 3rd and 6, I think it was there. But obviously, if the officials see, as Georgia did, Dallin Hayden, now you're looking at 3rd and 11, and maybe you don't get the first down there. And that, I think, was the second Ohio State touchdown, the Mayan Williams one, ultimately. So, look, there were officiating things both ways. And I think ultimately the Marvin Harrison one is the one that's going to get talked about because it had the biggest impact. But I think they kind of all came out in the wash a little bit in terms of numbers and what they would have done in the game and this and that. The injuries were big, no doubt about it. Losing Marvin Harrison was huge, but Cade Stover left the game early, and thankfully it sounds like he's okay after going to the hospital with back spasms. Mayan Williams was not really able to give much in the game. He was sick all week. We saw him practice, but he had just 3 carries for 8 yards and a touchdown. You clearly missed having that guy who could, really just pound the rock. That's something Mayan's done all year. You think to that first down call on the final drive, the last series of that final drive when they run down Hayden and he loses 2 yards. Okay, now you're looking at a longer field goal. If you have Mayan Williams available, you put him in there. I would say the odds are better that he picks up even just some positive yards or doesn't lose yards just with the way he runs and his experience. So that was a big miss. Obviously, on the Georgia side as well, I know one of their tight ends left the game, which certainly affected things. But it is unfortunate. This was kind of a narrative of Ohio State's season, right? The injuries. You don't have Jackson for pretty much the whole season. You don't have Travion Henderson quite a bit, and then he obviously doesn't play at all in this game. Was on a scooter on the sideline. Those 2 guys with CJ Stroud were the guys that this offense was built around in the offseason. You didn't have that all year if you're Ryan Day, pretty much. At least not that full complement. I think you saw that Xavier Johnson, touchdown when he came out of the backfield. I think more creative plays like that would have been done if you had Jackson Smith and Jigba. We saw a little bit of that in the Rose Bowl last year where he was lining up in the backfield with Travion Henderson, both guys that can catch the ball out of the backfield. Ohio State didn't do a lot of that this year. But specifically this game, injuries played a part on both sides. Penalties, calls, all that played a part. Ultimately, you're Ohio State. You have the ball with, I think, 54 seconds. I think CJ Stroud, this Ryan Day, this Buckeye offense, you give them that opportunity, they'd take it every time. And, they come up with a field goal that just doesn't connect in the final seconds.
CJ Stroud starts to run the ball. Obviously, there's a championship on the line, and he not only ran the ball, there were a few times when he lowered a shoulder to pick up extra yardage. So that was something that was good to see, that was needed. I certainly understand the approach that we've talked about ad nauseum in regards to the approach of CJ Stroud, not running the ball, not taking those opportunities. But with this kind of game on the line, with a talented team, he certainly was up to the challenge. And of course, he was phenomenal. And the offensive line was phenomenal in pass protection as well. Looking at the final drive, once Stroud made the run down to the 31, I believe it was. Then they go with the Dallin Hayden run, which seemed a little predictable. And just the way the formation lined up, it was like, okay, they're running off tackle here. And of course, Georgia just blew it up and threw them for a loss. And then it went from there. Were you okay with the play calling and approach from the time they got in fringe field goal range?
It's funny you asked this. We got back to the hotel after the game, and they had kind of a media room open with some food and drinks and stuff for people. And a number of us are sitting there talking, and this was the debate. And I left the stadium thinking that was where Ryan Day went wrong in this game, was not staying aggressive, trying to get into like routine field goal range for Noah Ruggles. Why push your luck with a career-long field goal? I mean, he'd made the 48-yarder a little bit before. That was 1 yard short of his career-long, but it wasn't like he made it by distance. It was a close one. And so that's how I left the stadium. And then I'm talking to some guys in the media room, and one of the guys pointed out, look, you get down there and you've been passing. I think maybe while you said it was predictable, I think maybe they were trying to catch Georgia thinking, okay, first down, they're going to try and take a shot or pick up some yards here. And, Ryan Day kind of explained it afterwards that, they knew they had 2 timeouts and whatnot. So they knew they had a chance to run the ball. I think with the way Georgia lined up, if that's blocked a little better, Dallin Hayden may have picked up big yards because there was space through the middle. I don't know how the play was necessarily called, but there was a route there for probably 10, 15 yards if that works. And if it does work, we're talking about, wow, that was a great call by Ryan Day and what a run by Dallin Hayden. And, then CJ Stroud can probably, maybe they try for a little bit more yards and then you take a knee, you call a timeout, you kick the field goal, and the Buckeyes are headed to the national championship game. I think they still had confidence in Noah Ruggles too. I think, again, you want to make it as easy as possible on the guy, but this is a veteran kicker who for the last 2 years has been really good for Ohio State. Obviously a different situation, different field goal, but he won the Rose Bowl in the end for them last year, kicking that game winner. I think looking at it, the distance, he had it. But I think when you're trying to kick a career long, I'm not a field goal kicker, but I did play soccer growing up and when you're trying to hit something longer, the accuracy maybe isn't as good. So, I think we can question this, but I think there's arguments both ways. I know both of these questions I've kind of been wishy-washy here, but, I think it's tough to kind of retroactively say, yeah, that was the wrong choice because we know what happened.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I in the moment though, I agree. I think I expected them to just continue to, I thought they might try and score the touchdown. Like, why not? If you have the time, and they were moving the ball, no doubt about it. And credit CJ for that long run. Maybe even, and again, this is just speculation. What about, I don't know, even if they have it in the playbook this year, but like a quarterback draw, would Georgia have seen that coming, even though CJ had run quite a bit? I don't think Ohio State called the quarterback draw all season. I don't know if CJ Stroud's ever run one. Or the read option. I mean, CJ's not great because he hasn't done it a lot at reading it, but I don't know. That we can what if all we want, especially on that play. I think you also don't complete 2 passes after that, right? And that goes back to Marvin Harrison. You don't have your best receiver out there. I think they tried to go to Xavier Johnson on one of them, and Georgia just had it covered. So, credit to Georgia for their defense there too. They got the stop when Ohio State couldn't on the drive before.